welcome to our Turning Land in a New Housing Community series. My name is Brandon Cobb. This is all part of the Land Development Accelerator program that we're building. So my partner, Alex Sadoff, and we're co-founders of HBG Capital and the Land Development Accelerator program. If you don't know, I'm the guy in the business that doesn't like to get his fingernails dirty, right? I like to sit behind a desk all day. I like to raise money. I like to do the hiring. I like to do the underwriting, the risk management, strategic partnerships. But this guy over here on the left, who was on a flight today and couldn't be here, his name's Alex Sadoff. He likes to get his fingernails dirty. He likes managing the land acquisition team. He enjoys the whole civil engineering process. He can read those civil drawings that look like a different language to me. He also is really good at taking all of our land deals through the approval process with the city, building relationships with the planning commission, building relationships with the planning director, and basically managing the construction side of things. I call it getting your fingernails dirty. Why do we do these calls? So we're creating a community called the Land Development Accelerator, and we're wanting to build this community for people who are in development, visionaries who want to bring their community to life. We realized that there wasn't a community out there like that. Tried to find one and join one, and I did not see it. So I decided, you know what? Let's join this. So, my goal is to bring together visionaries who want to do development, have a vision, and want to bring it to the community and bring that vision to life. This is all part of our Turning Land in a New Housing Community series. So, we talked a little bit about last week how to find the right land. Today, we're going to be talking about the due diligence. So, is it a deal? How does it pencil? Last week, we talked about apps we use: LandGlide, Land ID, Google Maps, Zillow, batch skip tracing. We talked about finding a land that is suitable for subdivisions. I think that's the biggest mistake people make, is they just don't know the areas to go after, and they don't know the correct parcels to go after. That really clears up a lot of confusion when you're in this business. We talked about how, we specifically like to go after, 50 plus home communities because our end customer is national home builders, and that's kind of the minimum threshold that they want. We talked about why specific types of road access is important and the road frontage. We talked about how to find if it's got sewer and water nearby. This gives you the density. We took a look at the topography and why you don't want to build on mountaintops. And we finally talked about the flood zones and the streams, and then how to get in touch with the owner, how to skip trace their owner, how to call them. And, we gave you a couple little calling scripts that you can use to find that out. Today, we're going to be talking about, do the numbers make sense? How do you know whether or not a deal is going to pencil? And what should you do during the due diligence process to make sure you do not find a bad deal? So if you got an interested seller, now what? We're going to be talking about speaking to the planning staff, finding out what they're going to support. We're going to calculate the sales price of the lots. And when I say lot, I'm specifically talking about if you want to sell it to a builder. Of course, you could be the builder on it if you want, but I'm going to calculate if you wanted to sell this to a national home builder, what they'd be willing to pay, how to calculate your development costs, and backing into an offer to the seller. We're going to be talking about hiring an engineer, concept plans, preliminary plat, and what kind of studies are you going to need throughout this process to make sure you're not buying a piece of dirt that's going to end up in a lawsuit, or even worse, that you can't build anything on. But real quick, what we've realized is a lot of people are kind of questioning, okay, what exactly is land development here? There's really two exit strategies that you can take advantage of, that we take advantage of here at HBG Capital and the Land Development Accelerator program. The first is this top picture. So this is where you just find a piece of raw land, you get the city approval, which is called the entitlement, and then you just sell the approved paper. You literally don't stick a shovel in the ground, you get it approved, and you sell it. This is a great strategy if you don't know how to raise money, or maybe you don't have a lot of money to do the actual development portion. I mean, this is a fantastic strategy. You can run very lean, mean. You can have a 1 or 2 man operation and actually do this business right here. The second is you actually are developing it. So you're going in, you're grading everything out, you're putting your roads, your utilities, your curb and gutter in. See, you got a little cute fire hydrant right here. And then you're selling the ready to build land to somebody. So a lot of people that I've found out don't realize that behind every neighborhood, they know who the builder is, but they don't know who the developer is. The developer doesn't get as much notoriety because their name's not plastered on everything, but there is a developer behind every single community that is invented. And so those are the two types of strategies. So do me a question or throw a question in the chat. I want to make sure whatever you came here today for, that we get you what you need. So go ahead and type whatever questions you want to get out of this. And at the end, I'm going to make sure that we spend the time to get all of your questions answered. So go ahead and put those in the chat or the Q&A. There's two boxes down below, and Tara will make sure that we get to everything one by one at the end of this presentation. So what does a entitled deal look like? So I just gave you two types of land development deals. One is just selling the paper, and the other is actually doing the development. So here's a deal that we did off Old Nashville Highway. We got this approved for 42 townhomes. We didn't raise any money. We didn't stick a single shovel in the ground. And, we took home about $446,000 of profit on this deal. This is a snapshot right of the HUD. So it literally took about 12 months to do. We didn't have to raise any money for anything. We just got it approved and we sold it, and we made about $446,000 on it. This is our cottages at Carriage Way development. So this is where we did raise the money for the development. And you can see we put the roads, we put the utilities, we put the infrastructure in. This was a two-phase project. And you can see we did pretty good on this deal as well. So we do both of these types of deals. If you don't know who I am, my name is Brandon Cobb. 8 years ago, I did not have any dreams to be a land developer or a builder. In fact, I actually was in my dream job, which was medical device sales. So unlike a lot of people, I didn't work in corporate for 20, 30 years and get sick and tired of it and have this dream to be an entrepreneur. I actually was forced into it because one sunny Friday afternoon, I was meeting my boss over at Starbucks, and I learned that I no longer had a job. And after the shock wore off from me getting fired, I realized that nobody was going to look out for my financial well-being but me. You can work as hard as you want for a corporation and a company. At the end of the day, you're still a number. And so I gave myself a 6-month ultimatum to go out and figure out how to raise go out and how to actually make money myself. And you can see this picture of me. This is actually a picture of me flipping my first house 8 years ago. So I did not know. I was doing 5 or 6 Home Depot runs a day. Look how cool I thought I was. I'm selfing. I've got all my hair in this picture. Hadn't lost it yet. And I thought I was the coolest guy being able to flip this house right here. I literally sold all my retirement accounts because I didn't know that I could use my retirement accounts to invest in real estate to buy that house cash and flip it. And we ended up making roughly $30,000 on that flip. And I pretty much dumped all the money into Alex in my new business model to start flipping houses. Well, then we graduated from flipping houses to building houses. So you can see this is me up here. Again, I think I'm really cool. Selfie. The framing is going up on this house. I think this is actually a house that got built, hit by a tornado. And we were doing a lot of reframe on it. And so we started building houses. And as the story goes, we realized that it is so much easier to build multiple houses on the same plot of land than it is to be spread out all over Nashville doing these onesie twosie new builds. It is so much easier to show up to one or two places and build than it is to actually be spread out. And so that led us to going after parcels of land where we could do multiple units. So you can see me down here. This is me. I've got the blueprints in my hand right here. This is a 74 home community that we did. So I say this because you don't have to be born with the skills to do this. I did not know anything about land development, and here I am 8 years later developing new communities. The reason why we stumbled on land development, we were getting ready to go vertical on a bunch of homes. So the roads and everything were in. And we got a knock on a door from a national home builder. Said, "Hey, we really like your development. We want to buy it from you." And we said, it's not for sale. Get lost. And then they came back with a purchase agreement and said, well, this is what we'll give you for it. And we said, it's for sale now. You can have it. And by the one, do you want the one across the street too? We'll sell you that. And so that's how we stumbled into the land development portion. So now the bulk of our business is developing land and selling it to these national home builders, as you can see by one of our other communities here. We learned that it is really nice to be on the side of the table that Wall Street is cutting checks to. So all these big builders, D.R. Horton, Lennar, they've got an unlimited amount of money. These are publicly traded companies on the stock market. They've got an unlimited amount of money, and they can buy as much land from you as you can feed them. And so we kind of went from competing with Wall Street, being a small local builder, to just selling them the land that we get entitled or the land that we get developed. One of our free giveaways that we're going to give you here, since you hopped up on the call, is our land development checklist. This is our step-by-step, what we do to perform the due diligence and make sure that we're tracking progress on every parcel that we're taking through due diligence, entitlement, civil engineering design. You can't even see the whole thing. It's kind of cut off here. So if you want this checklist, send your email to 901-596-6425, and we'll make sure that you get it. We had some trouble with some emails going to spam, so we changed it to a phone number. So if you send your email address to this phone number right here, we will send you this land development checklist for free. All right, so let's get into it. The first step, you've got a seller that's interested in selling. You've got a contract on it, or you're thinking about putting a contract on it. What is the next step? Well, first step is to talk to your planning staff. So every local municipality usually has a planning director, somebody that you can go talk to, and they've got people on the staff. So you want to go and talk to your planning commission members. These are the people that basically decide whether or not a new development is going to get, approved through the city. Every city has a vision for what they want in the community, and citizens of that community vote people in to make those decisions, essentially. So you can see down here, this is a actual town work session where people show up in the audience and they put their development on the list, and you get to be called up. Kind of looks like a courtroom, and this is where they actually present their development opportunity. Now, you don't have to do that when you're first looking at a piece of land, but it is a very good idea to go and meet the people who are in charge of getting developments approved in the areas that you're considering doing land deals in. And usually they have a calendar that shows schedules and when they're having these types of meetings. I'll tell you, before Alex and I started really ramping this business up, one of the things that Alex did a really good job of was he went around to all the planning commission members and staff in the areas that we wanted to be in, and he just got to know them. And he did a full-blown needs assessment where he would ask them, hey, what's missing in the community? What are the citizens complaining about? What do you guys want? What are some of the things developers have done to really create a win-win? What are some things that developers have done that have put a bad taste in your mouth? And what he did is he went and he started building relationships with these people and doing a needs assessment. And that's really important, because what you don't want to be is just some random face showing up for the first time asking for something. Though that works and many people do it, but it will pay dividends if you go and take the time to actually meet with your planning commission and figure out what their vision is for the community. Because when you show up next time with a concept plan and say, hey, I really listened to what you guys said and what you guys wanted, that is going to take you so much further than showing up, throwing as much density as humanly possible to try to maximize the ROI on the parcel that you're bringing. because they're going to look at you as somebody who's just trying to take advantage of the community. You don't really care. You just want to shove as much density on this parcel as possible, and you just want to make a bunch of money. You don't want to have that reputation. You want to be somebody that is helping bring the vision of the community to life, and it starts with meeting with your planning commission staff. All right, so this is the big question that we get. How do I price the lots? And again, this strategy works for anything. You don't have to be doing lot development for national home builders. This whole strategy works if you're wanting to develop multifamily or assisted living facilities, whatever it is, right? The process is the same. But since we focus on developing and selling lots to national home builders, I'm going to explain how we determine a price that we give the seller and how we determine what we can sell these lots for. So as you can see here, we've just pulled a simple Zillow listing. And we saw that over here in Dixon, there is a house that sold for $425,000. It looks like Richmond American Homes was the national home builder on this thing. Great. I've got a purchase price of the home. Let's plug that in up top right here. Next, we're going to multiply that purchase price by about 25%. Now, this ranges, but what we've seen is a good average number, a good starting point on what a national home builder wants to purchase that ready-to-build lot for is about 25% of the purchase price of the home. Now, I've seen it 20% sometimes where it's more conservative, maybe an area that's not tested yet, that they're a little bit more careful in. I've seen it go as high as 33% in an area that they're moving and grooving and they're desperate for land. So it can vary, but 25% is a pretty good roundabout number. So if we were to develop this land and we know that homes are selling for 425,000, I feel pretty confident that I can probably sell those finished land lots for about 106,250 bucks. But what if I don't want to do development? What if I don't have the money or I just don't want to deal with the headache? Well, let's back into that. Let's see what we could sell the paper for and what we need to offer the owner of this land. So our development costs, we're going to subtract those from 106,250. Now, in my market, I know that it's going to cost somewhere around $60,000 per lot to develop. Now, it could be more if there's rock. It could be less if there's not a lot of grading or the site balances. But this is where my industry knowledge comes in. So how do you find out what the development costs are going to be for your particular project? At the beginning, there's going to be some guesswork here, but you're going to be able to kind of get it close. You should be meeting with your builders. You should be meeting with other developers already. You should have your buyers list of who wants to buy this stuff from you already set up. And when you're meeting with your builders and developers, you're asking them good questions like, what are you budgeting for development costs these days? What's your average cost? And that's where you're going to get this number. So interviewing your target buyers is very important to be able to get a roundabout number on this. Now, the key is you're not going to know for sure until you get your civil drawings approved. More on that in a minute. But you got to do some kind of guesswork here. And you can always go back and renegotiate if for some reason, you do find out that the costs are higher during your due diligence period as you're taking this through. But I know that it's about $60,000. I feel very comfortable with that number. All right, so now we know exactly about what the development costs are. We subtract the development cost from the finished lot, and that gives you your gross paper cost. So we take 106, we minus 60. That gives us 46,250. This is essentially what our gross paper costs are. Now, we know that if a builder or somebody were to buy this at 46,250 and develop it for 60,000, they're basically going to break even on what they would purchase a retail ready to go lot at. Nobody wants to do that. They want to make a little bit of money if they're going to have to spend the time and work to do the development. So you have to give them a little bit of a discount off that price. We use about 70%. So we take that gross paper price, we multiply it by 70%. That gives us about what we think we could sell the approved paper lot for. And again, I'm talking about communities where we have 50, to 100 homes. So if this is a 100 home development, at 37,000 per pad, I think that's 3.7 million bucks. Double check my math. So we're talking some pretty big numbers here. So the per lot price is very important. How do I calculate the offer to the homeowner? Well, it's very simple. Now that we know what we can sell the paper for, just build in your profit. And typically we're wanting to go after lots that are a minimum of 50 lots. So if I offer the homeowner $17,000 per lot times 50 lots, that's a little short of $1 million that I can offer them for that piece of land, and I'm trying to make 20. So $20,000 spread on 50 lots, that's about $1 million. That's a really, really good entitlement deal. I would do that deal every single day. But this is how you calculate how much to offer the homeowner and how much you offer the builder. Now, here's a dirty little secret that we found out. Sometimes national home builders are so desperate to get inventory that they'll basically break even on the development in order to get the land and get the inventory. That doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And that's when you can really crush it, because your offer just went from 37 to 46. They're willing to do the development just to be able to get the inventory, especially in areas where they've had a lot of success and they want to continue to be there. That's really key. They want to stay in the same spot. And so if you can keep feeding them land where they already are in a proven area, if they've removed that risk and know that the area is absorbing those home and it's hitting, they will pay a premium for that land. And this is where you can really knock it out of the park. If I did get a deal like this, you can see right here, we just went from 20,000 a pad to roughly $29,000 per pad. That is a huge difference. So pay attention to what areas your builders are building in. That's where you want to be. All right. So now that we've got a pretty good idea of what to offer the seller and what a national home builder is willing to pay. And by the way, you can get a LOI, which is a letter of intent from a builder on a parcel that you're looking at, to get an idea of what they may be able to offer. So you don't have to do a lot of guesswork. I highly recommend doing that, after it's under contract and not before it's under contract, because you can go to your builders and shop this thing while you're in your due diligence period. But they want to work with you. They want to tell you what they'd be willing to pay, because they understand that if they're going to get the deal, you need to understand what they're willing to buy it at. So they're very understanding. Next step is to hire an engineer. Guys, we had a piece of land that we hired a bad civil engineer on. He was off by about 6 inches on a 7-acre parcel. What does that mean? It means we had to remove about 6 inches more dirt across 7 acres. It's a lot of dirt. And because we had to remove 6 inches, we had to drop all of the sewer and water utilities further into the ground. And that cost us more money. It's about a $300,000 mistake. I tell you that story because I don't want you hiring a bad civil engineer. They can literally make or break you. The best way to find a good civil engineer is to go to the city, because again, you're going and meeting with that planning commission staff and asking them who they recommend. They know the engineers that have screwed stuff up and the ones that have a good reputation. So ask them who they recommend. Here's all the services that you would prefer your engineer to handle, so that you don't have to do as much legwork. You'd prefer to work with one person that can do all this stuff and manage it, versus you having to manage, 6 or 7 different subs that do all this stuff. Most good civil engineering firms will either have this in-house, or they've got a good subcontractor that they sub this out to that they can take care of it. And that's your surveying, your geotech reports, your phase 1 environmental, your material testing, your endangered species, your streams and buffers, and your preliminary final plat submittal. So they're going to be able to take care of everything. And they should be able to send you a sample cost and proposal of about what it's going to cost them per lot to do your whole civil drawing set. Let's talk about some of the most important things you want to cover during your due diligence. Take a sip right here. Number one, the phase one, I'll tell you another story. We had a property we'd put under contract. This was a smoking deal. We were very excited about this. It was in a great location. There were tax benefits. It was in an opportunity zone. It had so many things going for it. And during the phase one environmental, while we were in our due diligence process, we found out that it used to be a storage site for oil barrels like 120 years ago. I mean, something crazy. And there were some contaminants in the ground from this oil. Now, could we have gone and gotten it cleaned up? Yes, but our buyer does not like land that has contamination because they're going to build communities on it. And if one of the families they sell the home to has a kid and that kid gets sick for some reason because the land is contaminated, well, you've just destroyed the value of their home. When they try to resell it, their kid's sick, you end up with a big lawsuit. That's not what you want. So we passed on this deal, even though it looked like a really good deal, because the site was contaminated. This phase one environmental is going to test what types of extra stuff you don't want in your land is. So they do a site inspection. They're going to review any kind of environmental records. They'll identify, recognize environmental conditions. So, like I just said, there was oil in it. They're going to go and consult local agencies and experts, and they'll determine if there's a phase two testing that's needed. And they will also review additional, site constraints. So, always get a phase one environmental to make sure that your land is not poisonous or has something crazy wrong with it that's going to kill your deal. The second important test you're going to get is a geotech report. Now, the geotech report is very important because it's going to tell you several things. The most important is whether the soils are actually good. Can I build on this? Right? If you go get a geotech report on a beach, they're probably going to tell you can't build a house on that beach, right? Sand just not good for building on. So this is what this does. It tells you about the site's feasibility to actually construct homes. You want good soils. Luckily in Tennessee, we usually don't run into too many problems with this, though it's out there. The second big thing that it's going to tell you is how much rock is in the areas that you drill. And rock is very important because if you hit rock, your development costs just went up a lot. Rock is very expensive. And the worst thing is when you're on a development and you hit rock and you don't have a budget for it because you're going to go over budget and you're going to go over budget a lot. It'll also tell you if there's any underground streams or buffers that are running through the property, because that can affect things. They're going to tell you, the load bearing capacity of the soils and any kind of slope stability and erosion analysis. Here's something cool about a geotech report. Notice how they drilled in specific areas. If I were to show you a picture of this development, what you would find is that these are the areas that we're digging deepest. This is where we're installing the sewer and the water, and it has to go deepest into the ground. So they only drilled in those areas where we're having to dig deepest because that tells us whether or not we're most likely to hit rock. There's no reason to really do a whole lot of digging in like a little turn around like the road because you're not digging very deep. You want to get as many tests done as it makes sense where you're going to have to dig deepest. And so that's specifically why they chose these spots right here, because that's where the utilities are. All right. Next one is a traffic study. This is something that the city may ask for, especially if it's in an area where your road is not, well, let's just say there's a lot of traffic on the road, or maybe the road hasn't been improved yet. The city's going to want to know how that development is going to impact traffic. So this traffic study is something we almost always, if we know it's in a busy area, we just go ahead and get the traffic study when we go to the preliminary plat approval. because we don't want to do all this work, go to the preliminary plat approval, then they say, oh, you need a traffic study, and then we have to go back, and we could have eliminated a step. So we almost always just go ahead and get a traffic study if it's in an area where there's a main road nearby and it might affect traffic. These are interesting. It's actually a company that is hired to go out, and for a week they'll just sit and count cars during the busiest time of the day, and they'll create a whole report on what the future projected traffic conditions are going to be for that area based on other development. They'll look at how this specific development is going to impact traffic, and they'll identify any kind of required improvements that you might need for this particular development. And so, they're not too terribly expensive. Again, your engineer should be able to give you one of these, but it's very important for the city to determine if your development is going to have a big impact on traffic. Nobody likes traffic, especially if you live in Nashville. You've seen it every single day. It's getting worse and worse. And so they know that they want to keep the citizens of the community happy and not create like a bottleneck, or worse, create a dangerous area where maybe after traffic's so bad, they need to install like a red light traffic system or something like that. So these traffic studies, they go hand in hand with the city helping create a very safe community for its citizens. Next is we have the hydro determination. This is important because you want to know where the water sits on the site. You want to know if you've got any kind of wetlands, water features. Hey, is the water protected? Believe it or not, there are some areas that are protected by the state, and you can't disturb it. And you want to make sure that you don't have one of those on your site, because it can cost you a lot of money to mitigate that. They go out, they collect the data, and they confirm any kind of legal requirements, and this prevents very costly delays. So you want to know how the water runs along this piece of land. It's very important. So if I were to just dump a bunch of water on a driveway, you'll notice that the water starts to form in certain areas and collect in others, and it goes away from others. It forms this stream. If anybody's ever watched a car on a hot, sunny day and just left the hose on, you can kind of see that over time, that hose flows down the driveway, down the sidewalk, down the street, curb and gutter, and goes in. You can see how the water flows and what the path of least resistance is. That's what this hydro determination does. It identifies the areas of least resistance where your water is going to flow. And what that does is it tells your civil engineer specific areas that he needs to design stormwater runoff or stormwater drains. Because if one particular area is getting a lot of water, he needs to design something so that water is not busting over the curbs and flooding houses. He needs to make sure that this stormwater mitigation system is designed to flow around the community to protect the homes, especially when you get these crazy 50 to 100-year storms. This assessment is what the engineer uses to help design the water runoff for the community. So hydro determination, very, very important. And again, your civil engineer should be able to give you this. All right. And so once you do all these studies, once you get everything gathered, you are really ready to start rocking and rolling. If you've got your budget and you've got your good civil engineering team, you've got your preliminary plat approved, you've given all the studies, and you've done your due diligence, you're ready to create some really cool new communities, like the one that we did right here. We've had a lot of people reach out and say, hey guys, do y'all do any kind of like coaching, or do y'all have anything that you guys do that can kind of teach this stuff? And for years we said, no, we don't have it. We just want to do deals with people. So that's one of the reasons for this call. Like, we want to do more land deals with people. And we know that it starts with creating a community around that. So we created a land development mastermind. This is where we've got the Land Development Accelerator program, we've got the capital raising machine, and we've got the mastermind community itself. So this is something that we're currently building. In the Land Development Accelerator program, we're going to be giving away all of our business systems and processes, the whole land acquisition blueprint from start to finish, all the land sales training. So how to talk to people, how to overcome objections, how you should be following up. If you've struggled with the entitlement process, if you're not sure about how to go about doing it. If you want to step by step, hold your hand along the way, show you every step and what to do and say along the way, we have our rezone entitlement blueprint, and we've got our civil engineering management guide. We touched on that a little bit today on how important it is to have the civil engineering. We're going to show you how to manage the civil engineer, what to expect, how to negotiate contracts with them, and our deal structuring guide. We have a deal right now where the seller's contributing the land as equity to the deal, and we actually don't have to go raise any money for that deal. So that was really cool. In this Land Development Accelerator program, we're giving away all of our contracts with contractors, subs, all of our capital raising documents. I mean, every single thing you could possibly need to run this business. And then in our capital raising machine, we're going to give our compliance guide away. This is basically where it teaches you how to stay out of jail and raise money compliantly. Like there's rules to this, and you want to make sure you're following the rules to it. We're going to give you our foundations deep dive training. This is exactly the foundation you need to start going out and raising capital. We've got our customer relationship management system that we're going to give away. There's tons of automations that are associated with that CRM for, how to find investors and keep them happy. We're going to give you our complete guide on how to raise money from friends and family. So every single person in this room should have no problem going out and raising a couple $1,000,000 from their network, people they know, friends and family. And so we show you how to do that, and we do a deep dive in the guide. After you run out of raising money from your friends and family, we show you how to attract endless accredited investors. So these are people that you don't know. These are referrals from your network, people that have, heard about you that are interested in potentially doing business with you. We're going to show you how to go out and find those guys. And that's when you can really raise, $5-10 million and really catapult this land business, or honestly, whatever real estate business that you're in, or whatever business you're in general. This capital raising stuff works no matter what market you're in. We go over the exact investor sales course, the scripts on what to say. If you have a call with somebody that you don't know, like, how do you want that call to go? How do you end that call? How do you end up closing them to give you money? And we're going to give you the email templates that we use to literally raise tens of millions of dollars. Email templates you can just copy and paste into your business and use and raise money. And we're going to show you how to set up your fund and syndication. So if you've ever thought about starting a fund, or you've heard about a syndication and you're not sure how to get started, we're going to show you how to set that up and show you exactly how you can structure it in a way that is most beneficial, because not all funds and syndications are the same. You want to make sure you set it up where it actually helps you in what you're doing. You don't want to copy what somebody else is doing. And then we're also going to show you how to keep your investors for life. The mastermind community is where we have these bi-weekly Q&A calls. So every week we hop on for an hour and we remove people's obstacles. So we hop on, they bring a problem, and we do it in real time. We solve that problem, and we try to get everything removed as fast as possible so they can get to where they want to go. There's 24/7 access to the online community, so you can post your questions in there, your documents, any problems you're having. If you've got a property and you're not really sure how to evaluate it, we can look at that on the weekly calls. You can get your questions answered, and we help you implement everything that you're doing to get set up and running. We've also got access to all of our internal systems and processes as well. So that's what we're doing. We're building a community. If you want to learn more about this mastermind, if you want to join our waitlist for it, you can send your email to 901-596-6425, and we'll put you on the wait list, and we'll send you some more information when it's ready. Other than that, I'll make sure to open things up to questions now so we can get your questions answered. Tara, do we have any in the comment section?
Yes, we do. All right. So let's start with Jeff Henry. He says, I've got a seller who has 33 acres in Williamson County, but the property is off of an easement. I talked to the planning and they said that it is only possible to build one house because of the easement. Is there any way to salvage that, or is it dead because of that easement?
Yeah, so every situation is going to be unique. There's no way to tell without doing a deep dive and looking at it. What I would do is I would contact a local land use attorney. And this is the reason why. Um, so I said how important it is to go to the planning commission and get feedback from them. Here's another dirty little secret. sometimes the planning commission doesn't like lots of development. And so they're going to tell you things just to shoo you away. And if you don't know the business, if you don't know the laws, then you could have an opportunity to do what you want to do, but they'll tell you differently. And so having a local land use attorney that you can contact and get feedback on that understands all of the laws and the bylaws of the local municipality and what they should be following is very important. Can't tell you how many times a planning commission has tried to tell me, oh, you can't do that, or no, we don't want that. Just because you tell me that we can't do that and you don't want that doesn't mean that your bylaws say that you have to accept that. And so getting a land use attorney look at it that's very localized, that's going to be a big step there for you. So I don't know, without doing a deep dive and like looking at it, but that's going to be the solution. Contact a local land use attorney that understands the local laws there and have them take a look at it and see if there's any kind of loophole. Because sometimes those end up being the best kind of deals because the seller thinks that there is something wrong with the property that's preventing its value from force appreciating the value through that rezone process or that entitlement process. And if they sell it to you at an as is value, but you're able to go and force appreciate it, you can make a lot of money.
All right. Dimitri Romanuk says, do you work with mobile home parks?
So we specifically don't work with mobile home parks, but this whole strategy works the exact same way. You can do this strategy for anything, multifamily, assisted living facilities, mobile home parks. It doesn't matter what it is. You're basically getting whatever development you want, insert whatever your niche is, approved for that particular type of community or building.
Let's see. Oh, perfect. Okay. Because I had more questions about that. I'm like, is there like, I guess that would definitely be a question for you, Dimitri. Is there like people that you can sell those type of deals to? I guess that would be your question.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's so many buyers of mobile home parks out there. In fact, I know one. I know somebody who buys lots of mobile home parks. So if you want to see, if you want to text it to me, I'll connect you with some mobile home park people that buy that kind of stuff.
Nice. Okay, Jacob Sampson says, are you splitting profits with investors differently on paper lots sold versus fully developed lots since there is a huge time difference and risk between the two models?
I don't need an investor for a paper deal. We put it under I did. So here's the number one rule of development. Don't buy anything until it gets approved. That piece of land, we'd never buy anything until we have the approvals from the city, because a lot of the times when we're reaching out to these landowners, our value proposition is, hey, Mr. Landowner, your piece of land is let me tell you a story around this. We had a lady whose home, she had 20 acres in White Bluff. The home was maybe worth $400,000. It was a really dilapidated home, and it was on 20 acres. She wanted we said, what is a number that would put a smile on your face? And she said $625,000, a lot more than what the home was worth. We said, well, hey, what if we gave you $700,000? Would you be interested? And she's like, huh? She was expecting to negotiate, and we went up on the price. We did that because we knew that if we could get that land approved for 74 houses, that was a really good deal for us. And that's exactly what we did. We put it under contract contingent on getting the outcome we wanted. And yes, we did have to pay for the civil engineering stuff, throughout that process. So there was a little bit of capital involved, but we had already gone to the planning commission and we knew that they would support this new community. We knew that they were on board with it. And so that's what told us, okay, let's move forward. Let's get the preliminary plat approved. And once you get the preliminary plat approved, that's when you can start spending money on the civil drawings and everything. So there's ways of mitigating risk. And one of those risks is the city not approving your development. And you mitigate that by not buying it until it's approved. And you keep the seller on board with that by saying, hey, your land's not worth what it's currently like. I can add a lot of value and pay you a lot more money, but you have to give me a year to take it through the approval process. And so if you're sitting down with that seller, walking them through that process and explaining that to them, a lot of times they're like, okay, yeah, all right, I got you. And you're inviting them to all the hearings. So they're showing up and hearing their piece of land be talked about in front of the planning commission meetings, in front of the staff meetings, and they feel this is like, they feel something's happening. And when you're able to offer them a lot more money than what it's currently worth, they're fine to stay in that deal with you. So because of this, we don't do a spray and pray method. We're like a sniper. We maybe talk to, I don't know, 30 or 40 sellers a year. It's not very many because we know the exact parcels that we want to go after. And we have a very compelling value proposition where we're force appreciating their asset for them and paying them a lot more money. And they need to work with us to do that. So I don't need any investors when I'm entitling it, because I usually have my buyer lined up to buy it once it's approved. In other words, the 12 months it takes me to get it approved and entitled, I'm already lining my buyer up. In fact, I've got my buyer lined up within the first 3-4 weeks, because that's also what's going to tell me whether or not I want to move forward with the deal. I've gone to my buyers list, my builders, my developers. They've given me feedback on it. They're excited about it. They're giving me offers on it. Yeah, this is about what we'd pay. I think we'd be around here. And that's one of the keys I need to decide whether or not to move forward with that deal and taking it through. So I eliminate all the risk. Now, the caveat is if you can buy that land for its as is value or less than its as is value, and the whole thing falls through and it doesn't get approved, and you can still turn around and sell that land and get your money back out, I would do that deal. That's the only time that I would go in and actually buy the land before the approvals, is if my downside risk was protected. That's a big point. We don't do that very often, but you can do that. That's one way of mitigating risk, is buying it for the as is value. You can also make a lot of money doing that because you're buying it for the as is value and you're force appreciating through that rezone. So we don't need a lot of investors for that. I'll tell you what we do use investors for. Let's say it's an area that there's a lot of development going on. A lot of times, once we get those approvals in place, we actually might decide to land bank it with our investors. So we buy that piece of land once all the approvals are in place with our investor partners' capital, and we just hold on to it for a year or two. We wait for all the development to finish around it, and then we'll just end up selling that land off. Or we might develop it. It's really where we bring investor partners in is when we do the land development portion side. That's when we put the roads, utilities, everything into the land. That's when we need outside capital sources to come in and really help out with things. And the profit split is as creative as you want it to be. So just think about the cost of borrowing the capital and how much investors want to make. That's going to cost money. Look at how much profit that takes out of your deal and come up with something that's a win-win for everybody. Hopefully that answers your question.
Nice. All right, let's go on to David Wolf, who's had his hand raised for quite some time. When you sold the first deal, were there plans included for the horizontal build, or was that the responsibility of the buyer?
When we sold our first deal, were the plan? So read that again. I want to make sure I understand it.
Were there plans included for the horizontal build, or was that the responsibility of the builder?
Yeah. So when you sell a piece of entitled paper, you're selling the development plans. That's what you're selling. You can't get something approved with the city unless they sign off on the civil drawings. Let's talk about what the civil drawings are. When you build a house, you cannot go and get a building permit unless you have submitted the architectural plans to the city. City will not give you a building permit. You have to show what you're building there and that it matches the zoning requirements. So the architectural plans tells you exactly what you're building, what it's going to look like, how big the rooms are. Is it slab on grade or is it a crawl space? What's the roof pitch? What's the materials involved in that house? It also allows a builder to estimate how much it's going to cost to build that house, right? A builder can't estimate how much it's going to cost to build a house without the architectural plans. A developer has to have civil drawings to estimate how much it's going to cost. Again, the builder might be able to ballpark how much it's going to cost to build that house, but until they see the architectural plans and they actually go get bids, they don't know for sure how much it's going to cost. Same thing with the development. Your civil drawings are the equivalent of your architectural plans when you're building a house. And those civil drawings have to be approved by the city. The city has their own in-house civil engineering team that is looking at developments, and their civil engineering team is going back and forth with your civil engineering team, making sure that it is a safe community, that it matches all the zoning regulations, that it is, the slope of the roads for the water runoff are good, the slope of the sewer, is there a pump station to pump the sewage, to the top of the community. So the reason we have such great communities in America is we have this stringent entitlement process. I like to complain about it because it takes forever. And then I see how long it takes people in California, and I'm like, oh God, thank God I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I'll take my problems back out of the pile that I just threw them in, and I'll keep them. But in other countries, you have so much corruption, and you don't have these governing bodies that have the community's best interest, and you end up with some really whack developments, quite frankly, that don't work, or the people who buy the houses kind of get screwed abroad, because the city staff members just get paid by the developers over there, and money is what proves it. So I really developed a deep appreciation for America when I started traveling abroad a lot, and I understood why we have this stringent process to get these community approved and it takes so long, is because there's a lot of eyeballs looking at it, making sure that there's no costly mistakes. And even with all the eyeballs, you're still going to run into some kind of mistakes. But hopefully that answers your question. If it didn't, let me know.
All right. Jeff Henry says, so once you have a plat map and an approval letter, oh, it moved, sorry. From the city, that is when the entitlement is complete, question mark.
Yeah, so the process works like this. When we first start looking at a piece of land, we spend money for a concept plan, which I had one pulled up here. This is this. So everything we teach that you're asking, that's going to be in our entitlement and rezone blueprint right there, that course. So really what you want is a preliminary plat approval before you spend a lot of money. So we'll go and we'll take a concept plan. A concept plan is just a penciled out neighborhood on a piece of paper. You can get one for, $1,000 or $2,000 probably from a civil engineer. So once you've got that concept plan, that's when you're going to go take it to the planning commission and say, hey, look what I got. Would y'all support this? Is this something that's good for the city? And again, you've built in all the things that the city wants and that the citizens are complaining about, hopefully, because you interviewed the planning director and the planning staff. So you're coming to them with something that's a win for them too, and you're getting feedback. If we get enough feedback where we know that they're probably going to vote this in, then we move forward with it. And so we take that concept plan and we bring it to the city and we get on their calendar. Like, let's just go back to this slide right here, right here. So we get on their calendar and we show up because we've put and submitted the concept plan to them. We show up and we're in this room. And when we get called, we go up there and they've got the concept plan. They're all looking at it and they're going to ask a bunch of questions. They're going to go back and forth on it. And they might say, well, okay, well, we want a traffic study, or we want this, we want more trees or shrubs or something. I don't know. And you go back and forth. And once you have a concept plan that they basically want, you have what's called a preliminary plat approval. And that's a big deal because that basically says they have approved this community and it is for sure going to happen. Like they will let this community go through. But now you have to show them the design of the community. You have to show them the civil drawings, the grading. You have to show them the utilities, the roads and everything. So they've basically preliminary approved your community. That's why they call it a preliminary plat approval. And now you're going to spend money doing the civil engineering design, right? This is where you spend the money to put to for this the civil engineer to basically design that community. And once you have that, it's called a final plat approval. And so the community's civil engineering team has looked at it, go, yeah, I can't find anything wrong with this. This looks really good. There's a lot of back and forth that happens over a 6-7 month period. So it's a lot of back and forth. And they've basically said, hey, yes, this all looks good. We like this. Once they stamp it, it's approved by the city. It then goes to the state to get your SWIP permit. And that's a stormwater prevention plan. So the city approves it. Now it goes up to the state. And now the state wants to look at it and have their civil engineering team look at everything. And they're really focused on the stormwater prevention plan. They just want to make sure that this area is not going to flood and, kill people or cause a bunch of problems. Once they pass the SWIP, then you're actually ready to go and pull your grading permit and you can rock and roll. But there's a process in here, and we cover that in the that entitlement rezone blueprint section right there. Great question.
Yes, yes. We have two more and then we're going to wrap it up because it's right at 10 o'clock. So Clint Rudd says, what areas in Middle Tennessee are you seeing the most opportunity to find deals with the flexible planning and zoning?
Yeah, it's getting harder for some reason. There's a lot of every 2 years there's an election, and it seems like because Middle Tennessee's growing so much, people keep getting elected that are anti-development. Doesn't mean you can't get your stuff approved, because a lot of times the land is already zoned for the community, so they would actually have to go in and change the zoning, which they're not. It's very unlikely to do. So you can still get stuff approved here if it's got the right zoning. It is getting more difficult to get stuff rezoned, but there's plenty of friendly Dixon County, like I've got a lot of stuff going on in Dixon County. Smyrna's great. Rutherford County's tough, but there's still a lot of opportunity there in Rutherford County. Clarksville, we've got some stuff up in Clarksville that we've done. Wilson County is a pain to deal with. So is Williamson County. But again, if it's already zoned for it, there's nothing that they can do. So it doesn't matter if you have an anti-development planning staff. If you're going after parcels that already have the zoning, they can say they don't want it, but legally they have to. But it is nice to have a planning staff that is pro-development and wants to work with you. So they are out there. They do exist. You got to find where they are. There's a couple counties kind of outside Middle Tennessee around Chattanooga that we've started to have conversations. And one of them came and knocked on our door and said, hey, we want houses here. Can you help us? And we said, yeah, we can. So that was kind of cool to get that phone call, that knock on the door, and have a planning commission that actually want development and is willing to actually give us land in order to do it. So it is out there.
Nice. All right. Last question from David Wolf. What is the difference between entitled paper and blue top?
I don't know what blue top is. That's an industry term I'm not familiar with. Maybe he can be a little bit more, maybe explain like what blue top is,
I'll let
because
David.
the entitled paper is us taking the land and just getting it approved for the development. So you can see there's no roads or anything on it. It's a piece of paper that has the civil drawing design that has been approved by the city. And so it's like, hey, we're selling the land and this approved design by the community to go and develop it. So you've done all the work. They can start moving dirt and pushing stuff around, right? You've done all that work for them. That's the entitled paper piece. We did this with this 42 townhome development, right? Like, here's the paper. This is one part of a whole civil engineering design. So this is just one section of a whole design plan. We sold the land with all of the design work that had been approved, and we made $446,000 on that deal. So that's what the entitled paper is. Blue top, maybe you can type that out and tell us a little bit more about what you mean by blue top.
I let him unmute. I'm not sure. Oh, he is unmuted. And I found some more questions in the Q&A.
Yeah. Hi, this is Dave Wolf. Can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, how's it going?
Yeah. Hi. Hi, Brandon. So it's on your slide is the term blue top. You start with raw land, then it says entitled, then it says
Oh,
blue top.
yeah, I'm sorry. It's right here. Yeah, honestly, I'm not familiar with this industry language right here, but this is when you grade everything out. So what I think they're talking about is when you go in and you basically do the grading. So you grade the whole site out and but you don't install any utilities. I've seen some developers do this.
Okay.
It's
All right.
it's not
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
it's like a lot of times it's getting rid of like the trees and everything where you can actually see the land. So that's a
okay.
big part about it. Like you'll go in I'm gonna be honest with you, we picked this we picked this picture online and I wasn't very familiar with the term blue top, but that's what a lot of people will do to kind of get it sold sometimes is you can get it approved but it becomes very difficult for a builder to or a developer to see what kind of topography there is. Now, the civil drawings have the topography on there, you can see it, but they want to get a feel for this land. They want to get a feel for walking it and how the community could flow. And so, what people will do is they'll kind of grade it all out. They'll get rid of the brush, the trees, and it's basically creating a clean piece of land that they've maybe done some light grading to in order for it to be more sellable. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it sounds like the bottom two in that quadrant, the blue top and the finished lots, it's the horizontal build, which includes like the grading and putting in the utilities, etc. So it's all just to keep it simple. It sounds like those bottom two quadrants could be called in air quotes the horizontal build.
That's right. Yeah, that's why we got up here. Like the entitlement is this section up here. We're just entitling the
Okay.
land, getting the civil drawings approved, and we're selling the paper. And then down here, we've got where we're actually spending money on the development, right? We've cleared the trees, the grass, we've graded the lots where the home can sit on them. And then here we've put the utilities and the roads and everything in.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Brandon, do you have time for a couple more
Yeah,
questions?
we're good. We can keep going. Let's get everybody's questions answered.
Okay, so Ken Shanzer is saying, are there impact fees from the local government in areas to develop?
It depends on the area, and it depends on whether or not you have to pay for those. So I've got in Dixon County, the developer has to pay for the impact fees. When they go and start developing it, and yes, they have impact fees. Of another county that we're in where the builder has to pay for those impact fees. So the city is only saying, hey, we need the impact fees when they go pull building permit. And so that's kind of nice. Here's a secret. The builder will always pay for the impact fees. Just make that the last piece of your negotiation after you've got a contract with them and you've discussed price. Just pull it up at the very last bit before you're all ready to sign. Be like, oh, one more thing to get this deal to go through, I'm glad we decided on a per pad price. You're going to need to pay for the impact fees, and this is a lot most of the time when you're doing the actual development portion. Some counties make you pay for impact fees ahead of time. Williamson County might be one of those, but you can partner with a builder. And that's kind of one of the things we teach in the course is if you bring your builder early enough on in the process, they'll pay for a lot of the due diligence stuff when you're doing these developments. So you don't have to come out of pocket hardly any money to do that. So, but they'll pay for the impact fees. Again, have a conversation with your local department about what the impact fees could be in the right municipalities and understanding what an impact fee is important. An impact fee is when you're impacting existing infrastructure and the city has to come out and install stuff. So like if you're tapping into their sewer system and their water, well, there's an impact on that, right? And you've got to do it. And sometimes it's just a bunch of baloney and they want to charge you money to get money into the community. The city makes a lot of money through these impact fees. A significant amount of money through these impact fees. And so that's why they charge it. So you could have an impact fee for anything. It's usually for like sewer taps, water taps, tapping into the existing infrastructure. And I've seen counties ask for a donation. Would the developer be willing to give a donation to the county? Which I think is just complete fraud, and they're not allowed to do that. But yes, speaking with your local planning commission is going to be the best way to understand that.
Got it. So Jacob Sampson says, what is a typical soft cost, i.e. engineering, feasibility studies, etc., per lot to budget for to get the plat approval to be ready to sell paper lots?
Yeah, so a lot of the times you don't even have to do that to get the preliminary plat approved, right? The preliminary plat is just a piece of paper with a concept plan on it designed around the zoning that you're changing it to or the zoning that it already is. And so you're not having to do a lot of heavy engineering work at that point. You do the heavy engineering work once your preliminary plat is approved. And so it depends. You know, you can get a lot of your studies done uh, after your preliminary plat approval if you want. And again, you can negotiate with a builder, pay for all these during the due diligence process. That's something that we teach how to do that and how to structure that. But you're going to have to, pay for like a survey. So, that's going to be a few $1,000. Geotech, I want to say is like maybe $6,000 or $7,000 to get a geotech report. Just depends on what kind of work they have to do. Your environmental, let's go look and see what we paid for an environmental report. There's also the endangered species report. That was something we didn't cover today, but that tells you whether or not there's any animals on the property that are endangered that you're going to have to get special removal permissions from. And so I had a buddy who had to spend $40,000 on a self-storage unit site he was developing in Florida because there were these turtles, and he spent 40 grand to get them removed. So all in all, your concept plan, you're probably going to be out of pocket a couple $1,000 to get that done. That's the first thing that you're going to do. If you decide to do the geotech and phase one environmental before getting your preliminary plat approved, you're going to spend another maybe, I don't know, $10,000 to $15,000 on that. Really, where it gets expensive is the civil design work, and so you could spend as little as maybe like $35,000 on a smaller community doing the civil design work. And if you got a 500 home community, it could be $170,000 on that civil design work. So it just depends. Our average, we're probably spending on average like $70,000-$80,000 on all the soft costs while we take it through. And we actually show how to negotiate with the civil engineers to take their payment on the back end once it's approved. So we've got some stuff that we teach in the community on how to do that, how to structure that to help out. Also, you can get a builder to do this. That's something else that we teach, is how to bring a builder in and get them to pay for everything so that you're not having to.
Nice. Okay. Ken Chanzer says, do you suggest staying away from areas where the land costs are too high?
I go anywhere where it makes sense. If numbers make sense, I'm going to do the deal. I don't care what the land is going to cost. In fact, a lot of times we negotiate the seller contributing the land as equity. We always give them multiple offers. Offer number one is we buy you cash once it's approved. Offer two, if you want to stay in the deal, here's option two. And they always like option two. Option two is always a lot more money because I don't have to go out and I don't have to raise the money for it. So if they contribute the land as equity to the deal, I don't have to go and raise money from investors for anything. I can just go finance it through a lender and get the deal done.
Nice. Okay. Last question from David Wolf. Are there firms that specialize in horizontal builds? Can you hire firms that will do soup to nuts horizontal builds, grading, roads, utilities, etc.?
Yeah, company does that. So if you want me to do it, I will. Our contracting company will A to Z, take care of everything. We do that here. If you're in your local, which is why I suggest that we can do that. I'm doing projects for other people right now. So shoot me a text with the info and happy to link up and see if it's fit.
That's it.
All right. We went a little bit over, but we had some really good questions. Again, if you're interested in any of this stuff right here, you want to join the wait list, send your email to 901-596-6425. And be sure to check out our training that we got going on next Wednesday at 9 a.m. And again, if you want the land due diligence checklist, you can also send your email to that phone number and just request it. All right, guys, that'll conclude. Thanks for coming out today. We'll see y'all later.